Welcome
Okay.
back, Think Tank, Frank Kenney, and my email at the bottom here, just in case you have any questions, or you want us to talk about something in particular, just let us know. I am joined again by the guru, someone that I look up to and I spend a lot of time with, and when I have questions, this is who I go to. This is my man, Bruce Hamblin, and Bruce, how are you, man?
Fantastic. How are you doing today, Frank?
I'm doing well. I'm spelling your name all wrong, but that's okay. We're going to jump back to, we talked about that, the waves of supply chain distribution, and you just walked us through, what happened with the crush of demand, and why we had that crush of demand. I want to switch gears here, right? The interesting thing about this type of supply disruption, that it's less of a like a hurricane or a tornado or tsunami, or something that is destructive to infrastructure. This is this is keeping people out of the workforce, and we haven't seen the second wave. And right now, we in the United States, we're probably a week and a half, 2 weeks in, and so this is when we're starting to see the numbers of infected. I think 23,000 in New York, as of this morning, and it's just spreading, something like 43,000 in the United States, or something crazy like that. And you know, uh, 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 we're going to get to a point where not only is it the warehouse personnel, the folks working in the warehouse doing this, the guys that are actually keeping infrastructure afloat, because we still live in a world, especially when it comes to ecosystems and it comes to supply chains and value networks. We still live in a world where people are running servers under their desk. Talk to us about this dependency that we continue to have on people, and maybe you can go into a little bit of detail, the types of things that we should expect, and
Right.
how can we get past it.
Well, you're right. This is a bit of a different type of emergency. Hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that tend to disrupt the technology or the infrastructure, but not necessarily impact the people to the greatest degree. With the COVID-19, with the pandemic, it's actually the people that are being disrupted the most. If you think about it, virtually all of the supply chain is dependent upon inbound logistics and outbound logistics, moving things by train, moving things by ship, moving things by truck, by airplane. All of those require skilled people for that to operate. Um, Even if you get let's say you get the trucks to the Walmart, what happens if there's no one at Walmart that can unload the truck and stock the shelves?
Mm.
What if there's no one at Costco? What if there's no one at the manufacturer to load the trucks? Our entire supply chain, as much as we want it to be agile and stuff, still is highly dependent upon people. Wave two, which hasn't quite necessarily impacted yet, has a potential impact of drastically slowing the supply chain, not because of a failure of um, materials, but because of an inability to move the materials, to handle the materials, to get the supply from suppliers to manufacturers, the wholesalers, to retailers, even to the end individual. Often we overlook that human component because I don't remember a time in history we've actually had this kind of a thing occur where it's the people that are being disrupted.
Yeah, and from a technology perspective, there's not a lot that we can do about somebody carrying a box from point A to point B.
No.
And there's not a lot that we can do, even though, big jumps in technology and
Mm-hmm.
AI driving trucks across country. We're just not here yet. But
No.
the idea of the three or four people that I had in my office that were taking orders from the fax machine and putting it into my ERP,
Mm-hmm.
or taking requests for load tenders and putting it into my TMS system or my WMS system. What about those, and what's the impact of those guys?
Well, we have to figure out how to let the technology work smarter for us and use the technology to the utmost. So when we have individuals that um, doing integration, doing data entry, those are areas where the technology can be leveraged to help supplement the impact that this is going to have on personnel. A company that all of a sudden can't process its orders because 4 out of 5 of its customer service folks are out is probably not going to fare very well. The idea is, can we let one person do the work of 5 by leveraging technology? Let it do the grunt, let it do the heavy lifting, leverage the technology as much as possible so we can do more with less.
I think what's interesting, Bruce, there is that, and you've been in front of so many whiteboards and architects. We tend to we tend to have this conversation that says, well, this box connects to this box, and this box connects to this box, and this box will talk to this partner, and this is where the order comes from, and this is the ERP, and this is the TMS, and these are the partners, and that's our maybe these partners will then turn around and feed it back into my finance system, and that's my order to cash process, and that's our partners. And maybe these partners feed back into my finance system, and everything happens in an automated way. And what happens is that even though this looks automated, you actually have these points of integration. This is where people are doing swivel chair integration. And swivel chair integration is you're looking at one monitor and you're copying, you're pasting, and you're putting into another system and another monitor, and that's swivel chair integration. If that person is if you can't work in an office, and that person has to work from home. That person can't work from home. So what happens to your order to cash process? So that's the problem. Can you give me some ways to fix it? So I'm probably a company that may need to fix it tactically. I may need to do it fast. So what
Right.
can I do that? And then I may be a company that, I need to do it fast, but I need to also think strategically about that. And how can somebody get help from this solution, this problem?
Right. Well, the first thing is to examine, you mentioned those where people are keying data in. Sometimes it's a little bit different than that. You may have a process where okay, the computers talk to each other, but humans are still an integral part of the process. The computers move the data, but humans still have to take a continual involvement in it. Um, Really, what we need to be doing is evaluating our systems, making sure that those integration points between those various boxes talking to each other, that when everything's right, it just happens. And they're smart enough to yell for help when they have a problem. But that involves making sure that you've got the integration set up properly, and people are not an integral part of the normal processing. Unfortunately, even with computers and programming and supposedly digital integration, often people are still plugged into those processes. We have to start thinking a different way of that when things run normal, machines can handle it. We don't need to have a person in. We need to let the machines do what they do well, which is repetitive actions, doing the same thing over and over again. They don't get bored. They do it the same way every time. People aren't so good at doing that, but people are really good about solving problems. We need to start changing our attitude on how we integrate and move data to the point where the machines are doing repetitive actions the same way, and they're smart enough to know when something is not right. Then people get involved to actually solve the problems, fix the things.
So it's more like having logical paths for error resolution and error handling, as
Yes,
opposed to handling the exceptions as opposed to handling the norm. Real quick
exactly.
question: doesn't cloud just solve this for us? I mean, at some point, doesn't cloud? I mean, can I just push a button and go to cloud, and that's my technical answer?
It would be so great if it did. it really involves in the cloud provides a huge benefit because typically with the you've taken a lot of your risk away from as far as managing infrastructure. You're not worried about the servers. You're not worried about is this running, is that running. The actual usage of the integration, though, that is still an area that companies need to evaluate. For instance, loading my data in, then so and so sits there and looks through and reads through all of them to make sure everything's okay. That's not a good process because if so and so isn't there, everything quits.
Right.
And you can only, and so and so can only do so many of those at once. Well, let's figure out how to let that person, that customer service person, only deal with exceptions, not have to deal with every single order that comes through. And let's let it happen in the cloud so that I'm no longer having to worry about is my servers up? Do I have power? What's going on? I just want to work with the data. I don't want to have to manage an infrastructure underneath it also.
Wow. So you're talking, it sounds like almost like a cloud managed, right? Service, for lack of a better word, and um, but you want to have the availability to handle the handle for yourself the errors or the error handling, and
Exception handling.
yeah,
I want
essentially, yeah, that makes sense.
management
Yeah,
by I want to do management by exception.
management by exception. Yes. And the cloud is, I absolutely agree with you. The cloud is key. You really want to just get, that server that has always been running and has always been reliable. It may be time to retire those things.
Well, it
And
also it reduces my risk because
right.
as my resources, my internal FTEs may be impacted by the virus. I may not have the people to keep that going as a separate service unto myself. Why don't I let somebody that specializes in that and that's their business manage mine along with others? I get an economy of scale by moving my infrastructure out into the cloud.
This is great. So, Bruce, we're going to wrap up here
Okay.
because the second part of this wave two coincides with wave three. What happens when you're working with, let's say, carriers, or you're working with warehouses that may not have the staff? What does it mean to get new carriers that have new trucks or new warehouses, and all of that? I think there's a close parallel to some of the things that you've been talking about with inbound and outbound logistics that happen at the supplier side with raw goods. That some of the onboarding things that I think you're going to be talking about are going to absolutely make sense. Once again, this is the Think Tank with Frank Kenney, my man Bruce. Bruce, thank you for hanging around here. And can you come back and talk us through the third wave, because now we're sitting on pins and needles waiting.
Would love to, Frank. You have a great day now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.